Welcome to Talking in Common, a podcast of all things lifestyle, family, relationships, well-being, kids and culture. This is not a how-to, but an insight into the lives of ourselves and others and how we all manage to get by. Hosted by myself, Kate Gadinsky, and my co-host Sophie Panton. Take a listen and let's find out what we all have in common. Hi, Soph.
Why is your voice so croaky?
Oh, stop it. Stop it and leave me alone. I do not have a croaky voice. It sounds fresh as a daisy.
I'm pretty sure you put me in the shit one of the episodes last time when I was hungover.
Okay, thank you. Share it with the world.
How are you?
I had a few too many drinks last night.
You're an animal.
I feel amazing now, actually. I've never felt better.
How are you?
Welcome back, babe.
Thank you. Excuse me, having a little sip of my tea.
No, you enjoy
What's going on? Tell me everything, but tell it to me quickly because I'm freaking starving.
Okay, I think that's what we have in common, right?
Are you hungry?
I'm starving because I'm hungover. And why are you hungry if you're not hungover?
Oh, I'm heavily preggers.
So there you go. Sorry, guys, a bit boring, but that is what we have in common today.
Yeah, we're both like hanging for a pizza or something.
I have to say, though, one thing that really helped me get through my nasty hangover was I knew we had this exciting episode to record today.
Oh, good. Love
And
that.
one of my favorite things about our podcast, you know, you and I talk about this a lot, is connecting with like-minded people. And I feel like today's guest was someone that I truly felt connected to.
Yeah.
Apart from being mums, we had a lot in common, I thought.
I haven't met her before. We'll do a little intro for her in a minute. I hadn't met her before, but I felt like I was speaking to an old friend, which I love. So without any further ado, today we are chatting to the wonderful Ash London. And she's honestly one of the loveliest ladies knocking around. We had a great conversation with her, just connecting and sharing and indulging in one of our all-time favourite topics, motherhood. And she's actually got a brilliant podcast of her own, the Ash London podcast, where she too is exploring motherhood in its early stages and all the intricacies that come with this transitional phase of our lives. Hence why we wanted to get her on and chat to her today and hear all about how she's going with it.
Ash is an Australian TV and radio presenter. She's best known for her authentic music passion. She is so passionate about music.
Knows so much as well.
Absolutely. And she's got a real ability to connect with some of the biggest artists in the world. You'll see why when we chat to her. Her honesty and openness is just so inviting. And she is just she's so real. I feel like you really, she is what she is. She's a total entertainment guru who began her career in music journalism nearly 10 years ago. And she is, of course, known for her Ash London Live radio show, which was broadcast nightly across Australia. She announced that she wouldn't be continuing with her national show last September after 5.5 years of doing that. And she has since given birth to a beautiful little boy, Buddy.
Buddy!
So gorgeous.
What a cute name.
Let's hear from Ash.
Heaven. I love it.
We're at Kate's house. It's all her girls' work.
Yeah. I'll be monetizing that for sure. I'm really good. I was just telling Kate before we started that I just cleaned poo out of my baby's belly button, which was
that's a nice one.
Yeah, because yesterday it looked like it was getting a bit red, and my husband's a real picker. Like he picks pimples.
Yeah.
So I had to be like,
you're like that, so
yeah.
But I had to be like, you're not
cap.
allowed under the cradle cap. Oh, don't.
Do you know she did that to my baby Ash one day?
Yeah, no, I would
she
do
had
that.
my baby sitting on her lap for ages. I'm like, what are you actually doing over there? And she was literally scraping my child's head. It was my first baby too. I'm like, can you get off my human, please? Give her back.
You know, I'm with you, Soph, because it's like, and I was kind of sad when I cured the cradle cap because it was gone and I couldn't pick it anymore. But I read that if you pick it too much, you can get infected and that would be bad. So,
well, that's the thing. I find it kind of gross.
Yeah.
Hence why I like to pick it off. But I was like really pedantic with my baby with the washcloth in the bath.
Oh yeah, a bit
really
of olive oil
every night. So she actually never got any.
What? I don't know. My child never got any cradle cap. Very advanced.
Not one speck.
Not a
All right.
speck.
Ash, welcome to Talking in Common.
Thanks for
We
having
are,
me, girls.
we are so pumped to have you here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, treasures. I'm really pumped as well. I'm happy to be here and happy to just be in a quiet room for an hour. It's teething week in the London Bryan household, and our baby's turned from easy peasy breezy, never cries, never makes a sound, sits there laughing and smiling to like, I don't even know who this kid is anymore.
It's all a phase.
I was
Oh,
secretly hoping he was going to protest his nap today because I wanted to see his cute little face on our
Yeah.
screen.
well, I
We were
don't.
like, hopefully he has a short nap and we get to meet him halfway through.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think he's just gone down. I'm checking the monitor now. Adrian's pretty good at getting him to sleep. So yeah, he's off with the fairies. He's asleep for 2 hours.
Well,
He's the middle of the day nap. It's just like I'm
Yes.
gonna
I
do
live for
so
that.
much. Yeah, but I don't do anything. I just sit on the couch and
Yeah.
look on my phone. It's so bad.
Scroll for a good hour.
Watch an episode of
Yes.
reality TV.
Yes. And I've been watching what's it called? The Gilded Age. Like I
Ooh.
love a
Ooh.
period drama. So it's from the makers of Downton Abbey, but it's set
Ah.
late 1800s New York.
Oh, cool.
No one
Check
talks
that
like
one
that in
out.
it though. Still, no, I
Yeah.
did it with
New
a
York.
New York boy, mafia accent. Yeah, so I watched a bit of that last night, and Sanditon, which is season 2's just dropped, came out last night. So after this, I'm gonna have this, and then I'm gonna have an hour of more period drama, and then the baby will be awake, and I'll be a happy
Ah,
girl.
Yeah.
heaven.
Happy days. So we like to ask all of our guests, Ash, what was it that you wanted to be when you were growing up?
Hmm.
We feel like it gives insight into who you are
Yeah, no,
sometimes.
I wanted to be an actor, an actress.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was that kid. I was that like performing arts kid. Thinking back, I think I may have been quite painful and precocious. Like now that I'm old enough, I think, yeah, people around me that knew me back then, like aunts and uncles, they're all like, no, you weren't. But I'm like, yeah, no, I did shows and so yeah, I wanted to be an actress. And then when I got older, I fell in love with music. But I had lots of super talented musician friends. It was very
Yeah.
obvious to me that while I loved music, I was not at a level at which I could actually make it. So I just had to find a way to be involved in it. And I
Mm.
didn't know what that was going to look like. And it kind of came good in the end. And I found my little niche. But yeah, I just loved music. So yeah,
Well, I was going to
actress,
say you haven't
music.
strayed far from that, as in like some
No.
parts of what you
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
radio presenting, TV presenting, that sort of stuff. Like
Well, I
there's
never
some
wanted to
element
do
of,
radio. I thought radio was like not cool.
You're so good at it though.
Thank you. But I wanted to do like TV because I thought like the visual medium was like way more fun.
Yeah.
And
mm,
it skipped all the radio units in my degree because I was like boring.
ah,
Yeah. And then I did a bit of TV, which is fun and I enjoy, but everything takes so long.
Yeah.
And then I tried a bit of radio and I was like, oh, this is cool because it's like just the immediacy of it. And you
Yeah.
don't have to stand for 2 hours getting lighting right. Like I hated that.
mm,
So,
nice.
and I got to do the music side of radio as opposed to like the let's do a phone topic about, you know, tomato sauce in the fridge or the pantry all day. So it came, I made it work for me.
That's awesome. Well, we'll touch a little bit more on that later in our chat. But can we go a little bit back to your childhood?
Hmm.
I want to know kind of how your childhood years have sort of shaped the human you are today and the mother that you are to Buddy.
Mm. Well, I had a pretty like weird upbringing. So we moved to the Philippines. I grew up in Melbourne. My
Yeah.
brother is 9 years older than me, and he was like one of those genius kids. So he like finished high school at 16, went straight to uni, blah blah blah.
Right.
Moved out pretty young. And when he kind of finished school, we moved to the Philippines. So I moved away from him and we stayed very close. But yeah, we moved to the Philippines when I was about 11, I think. And then I spent a while there, like away from family. But I had this amazing couple of years living as an expat in Asia with a lot of friends who were like super well traveled. I went to an international school where like the academic side of things was like really kind of pushed, and that was like it was cool to be smart for me, like
Yeah.
if you got good grades, that was like a really cool thing, and all the cool kids did the advanced maths classes. So I kind of had that nerdiness, but I also had a school that was had an amazing performing arts curriculum, and because I was like, when you're this is 20 years ago. So now kind of all of those Asian countries are a lot more developed and there's a lot more kind of Western culture happening. Back then, there was nothing. And it wasn't super safe outside of like, I couldn't go to the mall with my friends as like a 13-year-old Australian kid. So we spent all our time at school or doing extracurricular activities. And like the school play and the musicals were like my time to shine. So that kind of really shaped me as a someone who really loved education and really loved performing and the arts. And I also have a really close family. So like my mom always called me her shadow. Like growing up, I was just always with my mom. It's just me and mom. And like I think now that I'm a parent, I'm like, wow, my mom really didn't baby me ever. Like there
Yeah.
was like her plans came first, and I just fit into that. I think back, I'm like, wow, I never like, if she had to go somewhere, well, I just went with her. None of
That's
this, like,
awesome.
well, the kid has to have her playtime. And no, I wasn't allowed to have Barbies because mum was like, didn't agree with them. And she's a teacher. So she kind of really took that really seriously. So we didn't have lots of money when I was like young, but my mum always made sure it was a really creative household and I had to kind of make my own fun. And I didn't have heaps of toys and like, my rich cousins had like all the latest everything. Whereas mum would be like, no, you can write a book today or write a play or you can, like listen to the Guys and Dolls soundtrack for 2 hours or the Lion King, which I would do as a
Yeah,
pastime.
you'd love that anyway, I
Oh,
reckon.
are you joking? I was heaven. So, yeah, I think you can kind of split my childhood into two parts. It was like the time in Australia and then the time overseas. And then, yeah, and then I kind of came home and did a bit of boarding school, hated that, and then did uni here as well and studied film and television. And as far as affecting how I've been a mother, I think, yeah, my mum was super hands-on, super like we're a, Middle Eastern family. We talk about our emotions. We're very
Yeah.
kind of upfront with it all. So I think that's definitely affects the way I mother.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I think that
Do you
answers that
find that
question.
you implement the same sort of approach, like
I don't
not getting too many gadgets or toys or
Yeah,
surrounding?
I would like to think so,
Yeah.
but
I'll give you
yeah.
2 years when you have a 2-year-old, and with Soph and I always joke about this. It's like, I'm not gonna have all this stuff, like all this plastic shit that I don't want my kid to have, and then it's like 2 years later,
6
everyone seemed
months.
to
6
it's
months, Kate.
it's
Like,
actually there
it's
you go.
like, the teething yesterday, I just was like, "I can't do this. I'm just gonna put YouTube on."
Yeah.
And I just put him in his
Cocoa melon?
yeah, not I haven't done Coco Melon
Oh, no,
yet
don't do cocoa
because I
melon.
feel like I will jump off the balcony. Like, I've seen it and I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no." So I feel better about it by putting like old Spot episodes on that I used to watch as a kid, and it's like they're super shit, like
Yeah.
super 2D, but he doesn't know yet that
He
that's
doesn't
crap.
know yet.
So I put a bit
Oh,
of Spot
mind
on.
blowing to him.
Yeah, but I definitely the reading thing, like my mum really encouraged me to read,
Mm.
and I think that it had like a huge effect on my brain and my ability to communicate and just my knowledge of the world. Like I'm really, really grateful that mum kind of pushed me to be a reader, and I would love
Mm.
Buddy to be a reader, definitely. The only thing I probably do differently is my mum made me go to church, and I would never make my child go to church. That's kind of like the one thing. Like for me, if
Right.
he came to me and was like, "I've decided to become a Christian," I'd be like, "Okay, I respect your decision." Whereas most people will be like the opposite. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just I don't think kids should be forced to, you know, because it's too hard. It's too hard to figure out when you get to an age where it's time for you to figure out what you really believe if you've been not indoctrinated, that's a
Influenced.
yeah, but influenced
Yeah.
one way. It is hard to really know what you believe, and that took me a couple of years of lots of unpacking and unpicking.
That's interesting.
Because it
Yeah,
becomes what you're used to, right?
totally. And
Yeah.
it lumps in with that whole, like, even as a 35-year-old, I don't want to disappoint my mother, and there's
Yeah, right.
still that kind of, well, if mom told me that it's how it is, well, then it's true.
Yeah.
And, in my 20s and 30s, I was still being, okay, well, is this just conditioning? Like, because my mum's a legend. She's like, believe what you want to believe. Like, it's your life. At no
Mm.
Yeah.
point was she like, you have disappointed me by walking away from the faith of your ancestors. She's cool, man. It was me and my own hang-ups about that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, look, I don't know what I'm going to teach him about the world. Um, but yeah, look, I won't force him. Like, I wouldn't go to a religious school, and I wouldn't um, force him to go to church.
Mm. Well, it's a very different world now too, and he will be in a very different world by the time he
Absolutely.
starts growing up and being influenced by his environment.
Yeah,
And
there's enough of that. Like,
yeah,
there's so many forces at work these days telling us as adults, let alone like, small children who are like little sponges, who they should be. So I don't want to like add to that with my own kind
mm.
of, expectations and all that. The only thing is I don't want him to be a sporty kid because my brother was sporty and we just spent every weekend
Yeah.
either like at cricket or at footy. And I was just like,
Me too. I spent
right?
my whole
Yeah.
childhood going to my brother's sporting matches,
Yes, with a
and
tray of
it like to the
oranges.
point where it totally turned me off.
Totally. So I'm hoping he's pretty much just gonna be me and we wanna be in the school play. And I was like, "Yes,
Just a
let's
mini
make some
Ash.
costume." Pretty much. But, we can't. That's not why we have kids. I know
Musical
that.
theatre, perhaps? You can book him into some good, musical theatre.
I would love that. And I'd be like,
Stage mum.
yeah, I'm not a regular mum, I'm a cool mum. That would be me.
Yeah.
Like,
The funny
camera.
thing is, Ash, he'll probably end up being like a true Catholic footy player or something.
And I'll be like, "What have I done wrong?"
Exactly. What have I created?
Yes.
So let's talk a bit more about mum life. It's one of our all-time favorite
Me
topics.
too.
And yeah, we know it's yours too now. And like Kate was saying to you before, we've been loving tuning into your first season of your podcast where you're exploring the weird, wonderful world of motherhood. Tell us, like, how has your introduction to motherhood been?
My introduction to motherhood was completely different to how I expected it would be, but I don't which is weird because I don't know what my expectations were. But I think
Mm,
there's always a sense that you feel like you'll be the exception. And I think I've always felt like that in most things in life. When I'm told it's going to be one way, you think, well, it won't be like that for me.
yeah.
Um, but I think the biggest surprise perhaps has been the monotony of it
Mm,
and this beautiful kind of dichotomy of magic and monotony. Like it's this magical, amazing. You get these moments where you're just
mm,
like, is this even real? This kid is mine and Adrian's, and then there's this like, okay, it's the same thing I did have done for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
When is this going to be more fun?
mm.
So that has been a tough experience, but
We
I've
talk
had
about that a lot. It's a
yeah,
total paradox,
totally. And I
like
I
opposite ends
honestly
of the
thought,
spectrum.
yeah, but I think COVID really affected it because I just thought my maternity leave was going to look one way, and the first couple months of motherhood was going to look one way. We did not go to Qualia. I did not
Oh,
have one girl's lunch. No one got to see me look cute with my bump. Like
Did you get a
so
pregnancy
true.
massage at least? Probably not.
no,
COVID.
because I didn't want to get
Oh,
COVID.
yeah, of course.
So and this is what and everyone knows I love massages. So that was like the present I kept getting given, like a voucher. And I've still got like 10, which I will use now. But yeah, look, it was just that whole experience was not what I expected. And there was kind of a grief associated with that, that this is really my maternity leave and the first 6 months of motherhood are not going to look the way that I dreamed they would. And I
Yeah.
have to kind of let that go and be okay with that.
Mm,
And I really did worry that Buddy would struggle with strangers and not want to be held because it was just mum and dad and him at home 24 hours a day. Like even when he was born, it was like the height of Sydney's COVID outbreak. I mean, even my mum didn't visit. Like she moved up from Melbourne to be nearby and she would just drop food over every day. But she was like,
mm.
to her credit, she was like, I want you guys to just have your little bubble and I don't want to get in the way of that. When you need me, you'll know. And then about a couple of weeks in, I had a meltdown and called her and I was like, I just need you to come over. And she was like, I'm on my way. Um, but yeah, and he's fine with other people, thank God, by some miracle. I think enough of my like my obsession with relationships and has passed on to him that he was okay with people.
Yeah. I think
And
collectively, like COVID mothers can relate to that. I had
oh,
my daughter at the beginning of 2020, and it was like 2 months until we went into lockdown in Melbourne. And so I lived through that too. I was like, she's never even met
Melbourne was
anyone.
another,
She's like 6 months and she's never met another human except for
yeah.
me.
Just FaceTime.
Yeah, right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, Buddy like knows FaceTime now. And I know that he knows the difference because if I just put the camera up, he sees himself, he's cool. But if I put the face, because in the FaceTime it shows you first, and he that
Yeah.
when the FaceTime goes on, he knows he's about to see one of his grandmothers, and he's like,
Yes. Does he recognize the FaceTime ring?
yeah, the
My
ring,
daughter knows
Oh,
the ring.
so
Yeah.
cute.
totally. So like
And she'll be
that's
like,
really
yay, it's
cute,
daddy, or yay, it's her grandma.
and it
Or,
means that
yeah.
they're so happy because he's genuinely happy to see them, and
Yeah. But
and
weird.
we've made time to like, have face proper actual in real life FaceTime as well, which is, made that even more magical. But
Mm.
yeah, look, motherhood has been nothing that I expected. And I also thought that I would be a lot more earth mama about it all because I'm generally pretty like holistic and cocoa jumbo spiritual and a bit, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I kind of, it's weird. I thought I would be really into my meditation and my yoga and just can't be fucked, really.
No,
Yes.
there's no time. And then when, as you were saying before, like after this, you want to sit on the couch, you want to watch a show.
Yes,
The baby's asleep. You want to like look at your phone and just completely tune out.
exactly.
Which in
Mm.
theory, like maybe you tune out when you do yoga, but like you can't be bothered.
Can't be
You're
bothered.
exhausted.
And that's been a big learning curve for me is just to let myself not be bothered.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's
And
okay.
yeah, it's like it's only been 6 months. And in my previous life, 6 months was a really long time. But now it's like, oh no, 6 months is nothing, and that I circle back to that when I stand on the weights in the morning. And, oh shit, I'm still 10 kilos heavier than I was, when I got pregnant, or when I think about my career and I'm like, I haven't worked in 6 months. Shit, like that panic sets in. But then you have to kind of really go, well, no, you've had a baby.
Mm.
So 6 months isn't a lot. And that's hard for me.
Probably the hardest job you'll ever do.
Oh my God. And I have Adrian, my husband, home full time. Like we both stepped back from work, had a
Yeah.
baby, and we are as close to 50-50 as is possible when only one of us can breastfeed. So like if I wasn't breastfeeding, we'd be 50-50,
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend yesterday whose husband had to go straight back to work and she's got 3 kids. And I was like, well, I just couldn't do it. I know in my deepest, most honest self, I could not do that. And she was like, well, you
Mm.
could because you'd have to. And you're a woman, so you dig deep and you roll up your sleeves and you do it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think I could. I mean, maybe I could, but yeah, even with all the help, it's hard fucking work, man. It's hard. It's the
Mm.
hardest job I've ever done because I've always had this kind of fake job where you just like walk into a studio and talk shit and then leave. And people think it's like, oh, wow. I'm like, this is not a job. I don't know why they pay me for this. Motherhood is a job.
I remember people saying to me before I had kids, um, going to work is now the days that is like relaxing or relieving. And I could so relate to that now. The
Gosh,
days that I go to work and I drop my daughter at childcare, I'm like, it's just me.
Having my coffee, sitting in the car in peace, in silence.
yes. I had to
Yeah,
like
which is
host
just
a
a bizarre concept because
totally
before you
bizarre.
have a baby, you're like, I've got so much work, I'm so tired. But it's just a different level.
Yeah. My
It's
first,
emotional, it's physical, it's like
totally.
layers of,
Yes.
mm,
And you can't really tune out.
yes, you
Never.
never turn off.
Never. My
Mm,
first bit of work was hosting an event. I think Bud was like 6 or 7 weeks old. And it was for Universal Music and their friends and Event Destination New South Wales. So it was 2 companies I'd worked with before and I loved. And I wanted to do this hosting job. And there was a relationship there. So I was like, cool. And I remember the same thing. He was only 6 weeks old and I left him at home, expressed, left him at home, put some makeup on, and I got there. And it's like hosting an event for important people, interviewing someone on stage, it should be really kind of stressful. And I was like, like just loving it. I was like,
And I'm back.
I'm back. Like I'm just gonna, like put my music. Like, how good is just pumping music in the car? Like to me,
mm,
that is like the ultimate. And like screaming the lyrics. And I got there and I I couldn't have a drink because I was breastfeeding, but to me, that was like a really relaxing 3 hours, and it was
And
hard
how did it
work.
go, that
Yeah.
interview? Did you nail it? Or
Yeah,
were you
obviously.
like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize. Like, I'm not with you right now."
No, I think I was just so excited to be working again and feeling like a bit of myself was still there.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't think anyone knew how recently I'd given birth because they knew I had a
Right.
baby. And they're like, "Oh, how old is he now?" And I was like,
6
6
weeks.
weeks. And thinking back, I'm like, "What a crazy bitch! Like, what were you doing?" Like, no wonder they were like, "Why are you here?"
Good on you though for getting out
Yeah,
there, getting off the
I
couch,
needed to.
you know,
I really
separating
needed
from
to.
Buddy for a couple of hours and doing something that made you feel good.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think the 3 hours is my limit. This week I had a facial and I got my eyebrows done. I was like, "I'm so
LED I saw on your
Can
Instagram
I
because I'm a
say,
major LED fan.
I've never
It's
done
the
it
best.
before,
Yeah, it's
and
so good.
the next day I was like, "I am a supermodel. Like, I wanna go again. Like, how often can I get this LED? Can I have one at home?"
It actually works, doesn't it?
That is my like if you talk self-care, like a facial every like couple of months, that's my thing.
Yeah, no, I've
That's
already
what I
booked
love.
in to go back in 4
Yeah,
weeks, and I've put it in my
go
calendar and my
4
husband's
weeks.
calendar, and I'm like, "This
Same.
is."
I send my husband calendar requests. Facial all the
Isn't
time.
it like I never wanted to be that person that was like having to copy in my husband, but it's like if something like this interview, I didn't put it in the calendar, and Adrian was like, I know you verbally told me about this, but why is it in the calendar?" And I was
Yeah.
like,
My
"Oh my
husband
god, I'm
does that
sorry."
as well all the time.
Has he always been the organized one,
Mm,
like pre babies?
You're pretty organized too, Kate.
but not in compared to him. Like,
Really?
yeah, he's super organized.
It's
I'm
like
a bit like
Adrian.
organized chaos.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I'm very impulsive. I
Me
don't know
too.
if
Also,
organized is the right word.
no, Adrian is like
Yeah.
loves order, whereas I don't care, and loves like neatness, like not just in like our schedules, but the house. So like
Mm.
we tried solids for the first time this week with Buddy, and Adrian
Mm.
lasted about 20 seconds before he was like, "I don't want to do this anymore," and literally started like undoing the bib and putting it all away. And I was like, "In what universe did you think this was not going to be messy? Like
Messy, yeah.
he's a
You need to get one of
6-month-old
those
baby."
smocks.
Yeah, we got the smock. And I think he needs like a full I think Adrian wants to put a tarpaulin down every time. He just was not coping. And I was like, "You gotta let him be free with it." And I'm doing the baby led weaning. So I'm like, "You gotta let him feed himself." And Adrian's trying to like I'm like, "Don't help him, just let him be. He's fine." And Adrian's like, not coping, not coping.
You were saying before we, I think, clicked record that you have a cream couch.
Idiot.
Yeah.
Which
So
we
that,
bought when we were very much not in the headspace of having kids. At least it's washable, but, like,
yeah,
all my friends that come over are like,
Good luck
"Yeah,
with that.
yeah.
good luck." It's a no from us,
You need like a black leather couch, but like,
right? But
I don't
gross.
really want a black leather couch. Yeah.
Lucky for me, Adrian does all the washing, so he will happily strip the couch, wash everything dry, and put it back on,
He
and
sounds heavenly, this
he's
Adrian.
heavenly. He is everything that I'm not. Organized, clean, loves a job, never procrastinates. I am the opposite of all these things.
My partner's like that too.
Thank God.
Ash, so speaking about babies, obviously, and
Mm.
breastfeeding.
Mm.
So I and Soph, we both listened to your episode where you talked about breastfeeding. And correct me if I say this wrong, dysphoric milk ejection reflex.
You nailed it.
Is that right?
You nailed it.
D-MER.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for those that
Um,
don't know, it's dysphoric, which is the opposite of euphoric. So it's
yep.
crap. And milk ejection, which is lactation, and reflex is a reflex. You pretty much feel like shit every time your boobies have milk come
Yeah.
out.
So I never knew about this. Can you
No
please
one
That is
explain?
did.
fascinating.
So I didn't know about it until I experienced it, and I thought I had postnatal depression.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I decided, as I've learned after 10 years of therapy, always scratch the surface, dig a little deeper, ask some questions, figure out what's really going on. Because I was having these feelings of intense dread. So the best way I can describe it is when your boss that you hate sends you a text that says, "We need to talk," or your boyfriend that you're really scared he's going to dump you sends you a text and says, "We need to talk." And that kind of like kick in the gut feeling. And I get it. I started getting it pretty much straight away. And I was getting it all the time, but I wasn't paying attention to when it was happening. I just thought it was kind of like sporadically throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I would feel it and then my boobs would start leaking. I was like, "Oh." So then I started paying attention to, well, when I breastfeed, does it happen? And it would happen kind of about 30 seconds before the milk started coming out. So, like, as soon
Yeah.
as Buddy would latch, I'd feel like this kick in the gut. And for about a minute and a half, ugh, just like I'd think about things that would usually bring me joy and I would hate them. Or let's say I was like cooking some lasagna for dinner, my number one favorite thing, and I was so hungry, so ready to eat the lasagna. The D-MER would hit and it would be like, gross lasagna,
Chuck
disgusting.
it
I
in the bin.
hate it.
Get rid of
Throw
it.
it out. I don't want to. How could anyone ever eat lasagna?
That's
Blech. So I Googled it. Why do I feel sad when I breastfeed? And discovered that this is a thing. And I thought, this cannot be a real thing. This is obviously can't be real. And I spoke to my obstetrician about it, who I adore, and she confirmed it. And we had a talk about it. And she's like, absolutely. There's not a lot of study and not a lot of kind of research done, but anecdotally, she's seen it happen, and it's a definitely. I mean, it's not in my head. I know it isn't because it's so full on, and it still happens every single
Yeah.
time
So
I
still
feed.
now, every time you feed.
It's gotten worse, if anything.
Oh,
Now it
Still, it's
has,
still getting
yeah.
worse.
Now I get
wow.
nausea as well, so it's like I want to throw up.
Far out.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's. I always said that I would start to wean him at 6 months,
Hmm.
and it's 6 months today, and
Oh.
I don't know if I could wean him. It's
Mm.
funny. Like I just like I'll cry thinking about it. Like I don't want him to stop breastfeeding because I love it, but it's also ruining my life.
Once the letdown happens
Yeah.
and this feeling passes, and he still might feed for 10 minutes or
Yeah.
half an hour, however long he drinks for these days, do you then start to feel good about it? Or
Love
do
it.
you feel fine about it? You love it
Love
then?
it.
Yeah.
That beautiful because
So
he's a great
conflicting.
feeder and he's a good boy and, I love it, but
The
it's
connection
forever
and
tainted. Like when I think of
mm,
breastfeeding, I don't think of that
part
connection.
of it.
I think of that sick feeling that I get. And
Yeah.
I've had so much milk that I was getting like 5, 6 random letdowns a day on top of the 8
Right.
like breastfeeding sessions I was doing.
Do
You
you know
know,
if it's more common for women that have like a higher milk production?
no, it's got
No,
nothing
it's
to
just,
do with that. It's
yeah.
it's so the theory is that so prolactin is the hormone that enables lactation, and in order for prolactin to rise, your dopamine has to drop. And for most
Mm,
people, it's a slow and steady drop, but for me, it's like really quick. So you
yeah.
go from like feeling fine, to feeling crap really, really quickly. And yeah, nothing to do with the amount of milk. And
Mm,
generally, if you have it with one baby, you have it with all the babies, and it
mm.
generally stays as long as you breastfeed. The only way that it's better that I've recently discovered through sheer exhaustion is when I lie down to feed. So if I
Oh,
lie in
interesting.
bed and put him next to me, for some reason,
Doesn't
and
happen.
yeah, my naturopath thinks it might be because your letdown is slower when you're lying
Okay.
down. So maybe that, or maybe it's because I generally only feed him lying down when I'm like so exhausted that I can't sit up. So maybe I'm just too tired.
Mm,
But that has probably been the tough for me. Definitely the toughest part of the last 6 months has been that DEMA. But when I did put it on my Instagram, I reckon 100 women were like, "Oh my god, that was me," and I just thought I
It was crazy or
was
something.
crazy or had
mm,
postnatal depression or I was imagining it or my GP told me that I was, had PND. Like so many women or some got diagnoses, which I was really happy about, but majority of them were like, "Oh, I never told anyone because I didn't
mm,
want to like, admit it or I thought I was imagining it," which to me is just like horrible
mm.
because the research says that 9% of women actually in some form struggle with it, and
Yeah.
I think that in those early days a lot of women would probably just give up breastfeeding because it's all a bit much without really making the connect. I'm like a dummy. I don't know when I picked it up. I don't know why it's in my
Has that
hand.
been in your hand the whole
I
time?
don't know, Kate. I have no idea. But here
First
I
time
am
I've
playing with a
spotted it.
dummy.
I would have pointed it out earlier if I
Oh
noticed.
my god, I love that.
Where did it come from? I
Oh,
don't know.
that's so good.
Yeah, so I
I
think a
love
lot of
that.
women would probably just given up because you know what it's like. You're
Oh,
exhausted, you're leaking, you're tired, you're emotional, and then you feel crap, and so you stop breastfeeding.
Well, that's why it's so important to talk about your experiences, especially like someone
Mm.
like you that has a platform to talk to people
Mm.
about that. Because one of the fascinating things that I found from that conversation was that um, a lot of women, it would be misdiagnosed just as postnatal
Absolutely.
depression,
Mm.
Totally.
and therefore they have been encouraged just to, give up breastfeeding or
Yeah.
whatever, deal
Yeah.
with that diagnosis. But
Yeah. I think a lot of
the
our
fact that
feelings
you're in
aren't
tune
validated.
with it,
Yeah,
yeah,
as women, as and also as like mothers, I think
Yeah.
I'm one of those people who always I think because like my parents are often sick growing up and you learn to medicalize things and you just trust doctors, right? So if a doctor tells
Yeah.
you something, you take it at face value and then you just, but I'm learning as I get older that we often have to advocate for our own health. And especially as a mother, you have to kind of trust your own gut and instinct.
oh,
And,
100%.
it's tough. Like my GP has told me things that through my own research I disagree with about when
Yeah.
to start solids or just things like that. And I'm not going to sit there and tell my GP, oh, no, actually, that's wrong and the research has moved on. I'm just going to say, cool, nod and thank you and leave. But I'm probably not going to take some of that advice. And I probably
Mm,
wouldn't have done that ever before because if the doctor told me something, I would follow it to a T.
mm,
But now I find that I trust myself a bit more. And I'm not saying I'm like, curing cancer with a herb I'm finding in the garden. Like not that kind of, it's not misinformation that I'm talking about the doctors are giving. I'm just saying,
mm,
advocating for myself a bit more, trusting myself a bit more.
mm.
Um,
Well, no one
and
knows your baby better than you.
no,
So
totally. And thank God I've had a healthy baby and I am dramatic and anxious and like he's teething at the moment. I'm like, but is it meningitis? Probably not. She hasn't even got a temperature. Okay, great. Yeah, no, thanks.
um, it's funny because I think, when you're pregnant, all you think about is the labor, the birth. Like everyone is so fixated and
Yes.
obsessed by that. But you don't really think about what breastfeeding or bottle feeding,
No.
whatever it is you do, is going to be like. But
No.
it's so complex and can be so hard. Everyone has a different experience, but we just tend to not think about it.
Of
Where,
course. But that's when the real shit starts, man.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
seriously.
that's the hard part.
yeah,
But
like they
Once it gets
handed
to
me
there.
this baby and I ended up having to have a cesarean
I was
and
going to ask
early.
you, tell us about your birth.
Yeah, well, it was so fun. So well, it really was. I had this like heaven pregnancy, and I had like hardcore anxiety for a while, and my anxiety was usually around getting sick. I would think I was getting sick, imagine I was getting sick, never
Yeah.
wanted to get sick. So I thought, oh shit, when I have a baby, my pregnancy, this is my poor husband. He was doubling down for like 9 months of me going to the hospital every day
Mm,
because I had to get off my meds and all this stuff to get pregnant. And then magically I had this pregnancy and I was like, I'm fine. Like this peace just came upon me. And I think
amazing.
for the first time in my life, I was like, stopped caring so much about my own
Mm,
whatever. And like all I cared about was the baby. And previous to getting pregnant, I always thought that I would just want the most medicalized kind of drug fueled birth of all time. But then I got pregnant. I was like, you know what? I'll probably get an epi, but I would like to at least try to have a natural birth. And I did the calm birth classes and did my yoga every day and lots of meditation. And then at kind of 36 and a half weeks, the doctor was like, you've got preeclampsia.
Uh,
The baby's still breech. He'd been breeched since 30 weeks. So in my head, I was kind of, like somewhat prepared for a C-section anyway. Um, so yeah, about 37 weeks, we did the C-section and oh man, it was like a hotel stay. It was beautiful. Like I went in there and Adrian got to stay with me in the hospital and had beautiful midwives who I still get coffees with. And
oh, that's nice.
yeah, they wheeled me down and they allowed Adrian to stay with me the whole time for like the spinal block. We weren't apart until after Buddy had come out, which to me was the best part. And you'll like this story, Kate, actually. So I have to rewind a bit to when Adrian proposed to me a couple of years ago. And obviously music is a huge part of my life.
yeah.
And I'd always, like playlists and soundtracks for me are always,
Oh, good. Okay.
so
I'm ready for this.
so Adrian's like we go away in Blue Mountains and I didn't know that he was about to propose and we put some music on and we're just hanging around the kitchen and doing this, he'd made a jigsaw puzzle of photos of us, and I still hadn't clicked. And then by the time I realized I was getting proposed to, I was like, oh my gosh. And Ed Sheeran was playing, was
Oh,
Castle on the Hill. And I was like, even in my
oh,
head, I was like, this is cute. Ed will love this. So he proposes. I'm like, like of all the songs, I never would have guessed it would be Ed, but here we are. And then and then at your dad's service is when I got to tell people that I was pregnant. So I
yeah.
was like telling, I got to tell like Angus, one of my best friends, being a baby, and it was so beautiful. This kind of like this like life and death, and it was lovely. And Ed, at that service, kind of played visiting hours, and Adrian and I sat there bawling and
It
very
made me cry a
emotional.
sec, Ash,
Yeah.
after seeing you.
And then we're in the birthing suite, and there was this music playing, and I was like, "Oh, the music." And Siobhan, my OB, was like, "Oh, did you want to change the music?" And I was like, "No, no, no, it's totally fine." And then as we come in, visiting hour starts playing, and
Oh my God.
Adrian like looks at me, and I look at him, and we're like beautiful. And then more different music plays, and it's like 40 minutes with all this. And then it came time for Buddy to come out, and Ed comes back on again, and
Oh
it was
my
perfect. The song "Perfect" about
Oh, wow.
and then as they passed him over to me, this beautiful song about you look perfect tonight, and they passed out, and I was like, this is like the perfect
You probably were
song.
bawling because your baby was
Of
born, but just like,
course.
how could it sounds perfect. Like
It
that song's
was.
playing, the baby's
Yeah. And
born,
Ed
Buddy's
was
on his
our kind of
chest.
soundtrack of all these beautiful
Oh.
moments along the
moments.
And are
way.
you an Ed, like, are you an Ed fan, or it's probably not what you would have chosen for your
No,
playlist?
like I love him, but I would have chosen some like random James Blake or like, Jose Gonzalez song or
Do you
something.
know, my girls were born, mum was born to the Rolling Stones, Satisfaction, and this is not planned. I was like, that's kind of funny song. And my second was born to Fleetwood Mac, The Chain.
Oh, sick.
Yeah,
They're two sick songs.
yeah.
I love
But that was
that.
just by coincidence.
Yeah.
As was
Do you
yours.
remember that? Or does Becky or someone
I
remind you?
just
Because
remember
I
the
could
chain
not tell
playing
you
and me
what
just
was
trying
going
to
on.
push this
Never
child
be
out.
the
Just
chain.
like,
I love that. Like
shut the
that's
music up. Britney was on at one point, and I literally like said, I
Brittany.
fucking
Brittany,
Britney.
bitch.
See, I had made my birth playlist, but I never got
Yeah.
to use it, which is why I love that, fortuitously Ed was playing, and I got to, I got to tell him, and he loved it. And then for weeks after, when I wanted to calm Buddy down in the car or whatever, I'd play, Perfect.
Yeah,
And it was the
it's
Andrea
beautiful.
Bocelli, like half Italian, half English version, which we love because we were those like, those white people that like wish they were Italian and want to live in Italy, and that's us, and take
Yeah.
Italian lessons. And yeah, so it was all very perfect. And I like to think that as soon as he hears even just the intro to that song, he, smiles and thinks, oh, this is my birth song. But probably
The next time you're hoping for like a special moment in your life, if Ed turns up
not.
in your ears, then you'll be like, this is the moment. Oh, Ed's here again.
You'll have to take Buddy to Ed when he's here
Oh.
touring next year.
Definitely. He'll be there. Well, his first concert was Tones and I, because there was like no gigs. And then Sydney opened up for like a week before it closed down again. And he was in the Tum Tum, but it was Tones, and he loved that. We had a big boogie. But he's definitely a music fan. Like he loves it when I sing to him. He will like recognize songs. I can tell, like if I play a song he doesn't know, there'll be kind of no reaction. But when I put one of his playlist songs on, like obviously I play Buddy Holly to him all the time because his name's Buddy, and there's a
Is that who
recognition
he's named
there.
after?
Yeah, no, we don't even know where the name came from, but I named him that before we even knew he was a boy. But I
Yeah,
knew
right.
I knew he was a boy.
I was like that too. I
Mm.
was like, I know my girl's a girl. She was named already before we even knew she was a girl.
I love it. What's her name?
Actually, well, her name is Honey Ash. And I know you have a love in your life called Honey.
My lady. Oh, my
Yes,
honey
you have a
is
dog
my
called Honey, don't
13-year-old
you?
greyhound. Hates Buddy.
Oh,
Just no
really?
interest. No, I shouldn't say hate. No interest.
Hate's a strong word.
Just like shut
My
in the
dog's the
house
same
the
with our
night
kids,
he
really.
came home.
So funny.
Honey's
Yeah,
a
I wanted
great
to
name.
mention that. I was like, I know Ash has the love of her life called Honey too.
I feel like we should just move on from babies just for 1 minute.
We'll be here for
Even though like
Seriously.
this is all about babies, but let's talk about your career, Ash. And I know, music has been a huge part of your career and life, and something I know you're incredibly passionate about. Where did your love of music come from?
I mean, it's the $1,000,000 question because my parents aren't musical people.
Yeah.
Um, my dad was like had the worst singing voice of all time and only listened to Celine Dion, Neil Diamond, and Frank Sinatra, who are three of my favorite artists
Yeah.
now. And then my mum just listened to Jesus music growing up. So and Simon and Garfunkel, which I inherited a great love of Simon and Garfunkel from
Yeah.
her.
Mm.
I think part of it was having a brother who was 9 years older than me.
Yep.
So he was listening to cool music and then I wanted to be cool like him. So I was listening to, so like my first gig was like Powderfinger and Something for Kate at Festival Hall and he took me. So there was that kind of thing. And then there was I loved musicals. So I got into like musical theater really young, like a real deep love of that kind of music.
Yep.
And then we moved to the Philippines when I was young, and my only real access to like the life back home was MTV and Channel V. So, you know, um, especially because we got over there and I didn't start school for 6 months and I didn't know anybody and I wasn't allowed to really do anything or go out of the house. We didn't have a local park or like people I could meet. So I just kind of lived this life at home watching TV. And it was like, 98, which is 98 to 2000, the greatest time for pop music
Yeah.
in the history of the world. So like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears. Then there was like all great
So good.
R&B. Yeah, it was the best. And like music videos were like a big deal back then, right? And you'd like, nothing was on demand. So you'd have to wait. It's like when Ricky Martin, who was my always number one. When he would drop a new song, I would sit in front of MTV for like 12
And
hours
just wait
and
for it.
wait.
It's so easy
Yeah.
these days, isn't it? Just to like
Right.
watch what you want, listen to what you want when you want.
It was not like that for us.
No.
No.
We had to wait. Just like the radio, you had to request a song or like wait for it to be on. So really it was my only connection to home and to like life outside of this weird world that I was living in this foreign city where I was so different to everybody and had no friends. I just became completely enveloped in pop music and
Yeah.
I've adored it ever since. I just to me it's like and working in radio if anything kind of ruined that
Yeah.
because you stop listening to music for the love of it. So for me it's been really interesting to note the kind of music I've listened to since I stopped working in commercial radio.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
now when I listen to the radio and I don't know, I can realize, oh, that's probably Camila Cabello or that's sounds like J Balvin, but I don't know the song. Whereas
Yeah.
that was like for the last 10 years,
Oh, you knew everything.
everything. As soon as it was out, knew it, knew all the words, whether I wanted to or not.
So giving up your national radio show, that must have been a big decision
Yeah.
and a massive change, complete
Yeah.
change, life
Totally.
change. What kind of drove you to do that?
Yeah. Well, I made the decision before I was pregnant. So it was contract time and I only wanted a 1 year extension. I just felt like I was getting older and the night show is, it's all consuming. It's not like a breakfast show where you are done at 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
You're done at 10 p.m. And I knew that I wanted to have kids and like for where I wanted my life to go, it probably didn't make a lot of sense for me to be hosting a night show. And I think, the magic had kind of worn off, not in a bad way, just in its time
Mm.
way. And I
Yeah.
know that it's such a privilege to be on air that I didn't ever want to outstay my welcome. I didn't want to do it for one more minute longer than I should have because I want the next person to come and make their dreams come true. So I asked for just a 1 year contract and my boss said yes. And then a month later, I weed on the stick, and there were 2 lines, and yeah, I was really open with my team. I told them, like 7 months before I finished, I said, "This will be my last, you know, year," because I didn't want there to be that, which so often happens in radio, like, "I'm finishing up. Today's my last show, see ya." I was really conscious of wanting to respect my team and my producers and everyone I worked with. So it was nice to do it slowly and to be able to tell artists and labels and friends myself.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it at all, but it has been a huge change, like you said. I mean, COVID was a nice kind of softener of the change because I think if I'd gone from pre-COVID, which was quite literally like overseas every couple of weeks,
Yeah.
trips to Paris and trips to New York and all that. Go, 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 go. to
I'm sure
like,
it sounds way more glamorous than what it actually
oh,
is. In
yeah.
fact, I kind of know that
Yeah,
that's not the
yeah,
case.
Yeah, the first year you're like, "I'm so cool," and then it got to the point where I was like, "Can someone else take this trip for me? Like, I don't
Mm,
want to go. You can't make me go. I'm too angry. I don't wanna go. I just wanna stay home. Please let me stay
mm.
home."
Yeah.
So the first 6 months of COVID, I was like, "Oh, like my bag doesn't have to always be half packed, and I don't always have to be, like, checking my calendar to see how long I'm home for," and, like, it was too much. So I had this nice kind of softener, because if I'd gone from the craziness to the cleaning poo off the cream couch and not wearing a bra, living
Just
in
a
the
little
same.
extreme.
Yeah, the only, like, similarity was the fact they both included wearing the Qantas pajamas, but one was, like, on the plane going to New York in business class, the other was, like, same top for 3 days with a bit of vomit stain on it because I haven't had a shower. So,
Out of all those beautiful, crazy experiences from your career traveling and
yeah,
interviewing some amazing people, what was like a real highlight that stands out, or what made a real impact on you,
I
putting you on the
think,
spot?
I mean, I've had so many amazing experiences,
Mm.
but, who would it be? I mean, I did a really great interview with Harry Styles in LA one day, and I'd literally just gone over for the interview. And I don't like LA. Always make it smells like weed, and like I have curly hair, and like no one believes, but the weed smell gets into my hair follicles and I can't get it out. So I had this wonderful day where I just like arrived and I had it down pat. Like on the way to the hotel, I would order the massage because they had this thing called Soothe, and it's like Uber Eats for massages. So like the masseur comes to your
Oh,
house. And I had it down pat, like get off at LAX, get in the car, order the Soothe, get to the hotel, get the lobster mac and cheese, eat the lobster mac and cheese, have the like I
Yum.
had it down pat.
I want lobster mac and
Oh my
cheese.
gosh, it was so
Sorry.
good. So
Oh,
good.
yum.
And I would do like 2-day trips because I was like, I don't want to stay 1 second longer than I have to. And I just had this like, I think I was at the point in my career where I'd well and truly gotten over the idea that any of these artists were cool and were
Yeah.
any better than anyone. And I like approached it with like a respect, but really like, come on, guys. We
mm.
all have a very easy life and none of this is important.
Yeah.
And I brought that to the interview and it was like, no one has given less of a shit. No, that's not the word. That's not the right word. I just was in a funny mood and he appreciated it. We just had this great chat. And I
Mm.
was like, that was worth, the flying for. The same with like
Mm.
Taylor Swift. It was like 24 hours in Paris for an interview with Taylor Swift. And that's one of those moments where you're like, my life is ridiculous. Like
Mm.
Didn't I
this
just do
is,
that?
yeah, like I'm walking around Paris, listening to the album, like stopping for a glass of wine. I was like, this is insane. It's just insanity. So yeah, Stylesy, Taylor Swift. And then I got to do all of like the MTV VMAs and stuff. And that was very full circle because when I was a kid, I dreamed of being just like close to that world.
Yeah.
And then
Mm.
I was able to, go and be in the room, watch it happen. And again, it takes the shine off because you realize that, like everything in this industry, it's all bullshit. Not in a
Mm.
bad way, just it is. It's all just a facade. But I'm really grateful for that experience because it means that I don't ever really look at anything anymore and think, wow, those people are happy and their life is so much better than mine. And I don't have any of that kind of striving because I know that, and Kate, I'm sure you have much the same experience where you realize that these people that we think have got their
Mm.
shit together and whose lives are perfect and don't have any problems are just as insecure, just as
Yeah.
scared, just as normal as all of us.
All
So
just
true.
people.
Yeah, totally. So,
We're all the same. We are all human beings.
yes.
And
So,
now you've
yeah.
just settled into your nice life of
Yeah. I
podcasting
mean, I
from
do I
home.
do miss I
How
miss
good.
I do miss the Emirates business class bar. And I miss that. I have moments where I'm like, buddy, mom used to be really
Really
cool.
cool.
Yeah. Like, of
At least you've got
course.
it on record to prove it.
Right. That's what I
Yeah.
often say. But life has changed. And I have to admit, there are moments where I do think, oh God, like, am I ever going to get my life back? Like,
Mm.
will someone ever hire me again? Like, and there was part of me that was kind of didn't want to be just, the mum broadcaster and kind of really actively avoided that and fought against it, which really is just misogyny. Like that really is just this
Mm.
internalized misogyny that I have kind of absorbed, that in some sense mum content is, you know, not as cool as other content. But
Mm.
once I became aware of that and I could kind of call it what it is, now I'm like, I have a better attitude about it, because
Mm.
that really, like, I can do an interview with someone really cool and famous, and one person might reach out and be like, I love that interview. But I can talk about, how breastfeeding makes me stressed, and 300 women will be like, oh my God, thank you.
People can relate to it. It's
Exactly.
real,
Totally. So I
you
think
know?
I'm glad I got over that BS.
Yeah.
So you're also studying your postgrad in psychology.
Mm.
Um, this is something that sort of sparked a bit of interest for both Soph and I. Tell us about this. What led you to it? Um, how do you hope to sort of integrate this into your life or your
Yeah.
media work?
So I did it because I had a really keen interest in mindfulness, and
Mm.
the world needs kind of more of that stuff. But I was finding that a lot of broadcasters were kind of talking from a place of no real education. And I
Mm.
think in this day and age, it's really important, which is like why on my podcast, if I ever have an expert on or someone speaking to a topic, I will always make a point of outlining their qualifications, because I think, you can't just take advice from anybody. So I was
Mm.
looking around at the media landscape at the time, commercial radio, feeling like there's so much more I could be offering here, but I can't really do that unless, like me being a yoga fan and doing meditation doesn't put me in a place where I'm allowed to speak to those things. So I just wanted to kind of up my game a bit. So I enrolled and obviously deferred now for the baby. But the first year was really tough because I thought I'd be talking about like trauma, and it was just like statistics. Like it was a year of
Mm.
statistics, and it was harrowing. And
Mm.
I was like, had morning sickness, and I was like,
Why did I do
yeah,
this?
why did I do this? But
Mm.
really interesting. And it already, even though I think I've done about a third of it, it's made me, it's helped me to question a lot of things that I read on the internet. I'm like, okay, well, has there actually been any studies done to prove that? And I can actually read the study. And because of my understanding of statistics, I know what they're talking about. So if anyone's thinking of doing psychology, it will be a lot of mathematics at the start, just warning you.
I've always had it in my head that I'd like to do it, but I don't think I'm ever going to do it. So
I
I'm really
mean,
impressed that you're doing it.
just, yeah, look,
You go, girl.
thank you. I'm really proud that I even got through the year. And of course, it was like first one, HD, second one, distinction, third one, credit. Well, the fourth one, I was like, God, give me a pass.
Just get me through this. It
Seriously.
is so fascinating, though, like just the study of people's behavior. Like, I find it really fascinating as well. I find, like, when I speak to my psychologist, that I'm like, so tell me more about this theory that you're finding behaviors from me. Like, tell me about it. She's like,
I read this
let's not waste
really,
the time.
yeah, you're paying me. I read
Yeah.
this really great book called How to Do the Work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she's a clinical psychologist. On Instagram, she's called the holistic psychologist, Nicole LaPera, I think her name is. And I highly recommend that. It was, for me, it was life changing, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that is about how so much of the way we interact with the world was how we are parented, which isn't a new idea at all,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
it made a lot of sense to me. And the idea that everything that happens to you is your responsibility, not because it's your fault that it happened, but as soon as it happens to you, what are you going to do about it? Then it's you, and you can
Mm.
be a victim. You can keep just living on autopilot as a kind of product of your experiences, or you can kind of scratch the surface, dig deeper, figure out why you're doing what you're doing, and then change it. And that was really, really life changing for me to figure out, why I'm anxious about medical stuff. And
Mm.
the way I was parented, that made a lot of sense when I kind of unpacked that.
Mm.
And then I could
Okay.
actively like work against that. Okay, no, this isn't something that's wrong with me. It's just an internalized belief because it's what I was shown growing up.
Yeah.
But I can choose to not pass that on to Buddy. Because as you know, once you have a kid, it's like, oh God, I don't want to fuck them
No.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
up.
you
And we
naturally start
will.
to do those sorts of things,
Mm,
like, influence them in a way from your insecurities or something. And then you're like,
totally.
what am I doing?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
stop. It's an innocent
Yeah.
child that hasn't been influenced yet.
I
Like,
know, little Bubba.
let them
Um,
be.
Ash, we could talk to you for hours,
You guys are
but I
great.
really want you to get like a bit of time on the couch to watch a
Oh,
show. And
Sanditon
I
season
feel
2
like,
premiere.
but before we finish up,
Yes.
do you have any kind of little sweet slices of advice that you would give to a new mum?
My sweet slice of advice would be that there are no rules. So just like get over the idea of it should be this. No, I don't care which expert tells you what it is. You've got to do what works for you. So, like, you need to put that baby on the boob to get them to sleep. Or who do you answer to about that? Nobody. You don't answer to anybody but yourself. Do what
Do what
works for
works for
you.
you.
Yeah.
Mm,
And
Jigs.
get help.
I couldn't agree more with that,
Yeah.
actually.
I mean, I still
We
won't
all,
take that advice a lot of the time, but
Yeah.
I know it to be true even if I don't take that advice.
well, we're all good at doing that, giving the good advice.
Yeah, right.
Finding it hard to practice what we preach. Thank you so much, Ash.
Thank
You have
you.
been such a pleasure to talk to. And from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your precious time, because we all know what it's like to take time away from, your babies or, your time when they're asleep and things like that.
Thank you. Will
So,
you come on
thank
my
you so much.
podcast now? Can we do like a reciprocal?
Yes.
Because I'm asking you on the
let's.
podcast, so you can't say no. I
Okay,
suppose
let's
do a
do it.
follow
You
up
do that.
We do that to people on record too.
I feel like we need to continue our chat.
Yes. Thank you
We'd
so
love to.
much,
We
girls,
can
for having
continue the
me.
conversation.
Yes. Okay. To be continued at some point in coming months. Love you,
Yes.
girls. Thank you so
We
much.
love you, Ash. Thank you so much.